So this is Economics Chapter 2 in Class 10th. Sectors of Indian economy. So sectors of economic activities. Let us look at these pictures. You will find that some people are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these are activities producing goods. Some others are producing services. These activities are happening around us every minute as we speak. So how do we understand these activities? One way of doing this is to group them or classify them using some important criterion. These groups are also called sectors. So here we have, I think, newspaper delivery here, coolies, uh, cotton cotton farms, brick factories, tailor shops, etc. So we begin by looking at different kind of economic activities. There are many activities that are undertaken by directly using natural resources. Take, for example, the cultivation of cotton. It takes place within a crop season. For the growth of cotton plant, we depend mainly but not entirely on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine, and climate. The product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Similarly, in the case of an activity like dairy, we are dependent of the biological process of the animals and availability of fodder, etc. The product here is milk, that is also a natural product. Similarly, minerals and ores are also natural products. When we produce goods by exploiting natural resources, it is an activity of primary sector. That's the definition of primary sector. When we produce goods by exploiting natural resources, it's called the primary sector. Um, okay, now why primary? This is because it forms the base for all other products that we subsequently make. Since most of the natural products we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forestry, this sector is also called the agriculture and related sector. These both are 1 mark questions. Okay, now the secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with the industrial activity. It is the next step after primary. The product is not obtained by nature but has to be made, and therefore, uh, some process of manufacturing is essential. Okay, this could be in a factory, a workshop, or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from plant, we spin yarn and weave cloth. Using sugarcane as raw material, we make sugar or gur. We convert we convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since this sector gradually became associated with the different kinds of industries that came up, it is also called industrial sector. And the one that I'm marking right now is a definition. The activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate with industrial activity is called secondary sector. Okay, so let's continue. After primary and secondary, there is a third category of activities that falls under the tertiary sector and is different from the above two. Okay, why? These are activities that help in the development of primary and secondary sectors. Okay. And these are activities that help in the development of primary and secondary sectors. These activities by themselves do not produce any good, but they are an aid or support for the production process. Okay, so for example, goods that are produced in the primary or secondary sector would need to be transported by trucks or trains and then sold in the wholesale and retail shops. Okay, at times it may be necessary to store these in go downs. We also may need to talk to others over the telephone or send letters or borrow money from banks to help production and trade. Transport, storage, communication, banking, and trade are some examples of tertiary activities. Since these activities generate services rather than goods, the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. Okay, now the service sector also includes some essential services that may not directly help in the production of goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, and those who provide personal services such as washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers, and people to do administrative and accounting works. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc., have become important. Economic activities, though are grouped into three different categories, are highly interdependent. Let us look at some examples. So here let's see this diagram. So primary or agriculture sector, you produce these goods, okay, produces natural goods, and then it is in the secondary sector produces manufactured goods, and this one, tertiary or service sector, helps to develop other sectors. Okay, pretty simple. Now we'll have to see an example and list out what it shows. So imagine what would happen if farmers refused to sell sugarcane to a particular sugar mill. The mill would have to shut down. So this shows the secondary sector or industrial sector being dependent on the primary. Imagine what would happen to cotton cultivation if companies decide not to buy from Indian market and import all cotton they need from other countries. Okay, so Indian cotton cultivation may become less profitable and the farmers may even go bankrupt if they cannot quickly switch to other crops. Cotton prices will fall. So this shows how the primary sector is dependent on the secondary sector. Farmers buy many goods such as tractors, pump sets, electricity, pesticides, and fertilizers. Imagine what would happen if the price of fertilizers or pump set goes up. Cost of cultivation of the farmers will rise and their profits will be reduced. This shows how the primary sector is dependent on the tertiary sector. People working in industrial and service sectors needs food. Imagine what would happen if there is a strike by transporters and lorries and they refuse to take vegetables, milks, etc. from rural areas. Food will become scarce in urban areas, whereas farmers will be unable to sell their products. This shows how how all the three sectors are dependent on some forms of the tertiary sector. Now, this is analyzing all the different situations. So, Bloom's revised taxonomy level 4. Alright, let's continue. Level 4 or 5, I forgot. So let's work these out. Complete the above table to show how sectors are dependent on each other, which we did. Explain the difference between primary, secondary and tertiary sector using examples other than those mentioned in the text. So we could list out the definition. That is, the primary sector, it is the production of goods by exploiting the natural resources, okay, and that's called primary sector. Secondary sector is manufacturing the products obtained from the primary sector into something that can be used, and tertiary sector is the sector that is used for the development of both the primary and secondary sector. And now some examples can also be mentioned. It's pretty much easy. Now what we need to do is to, the next question says, classify the following list of occupations under primary, secondary and tertiary. So for primary I write P, for secondary I write S, and for tertiary I write T. Tailor, T. Basket weaver, it's an S. Flower cultivator, P. Milk vendor, T. Fisherman, P. Priest, T. Courier, T. Workers in a match factory, S. Moneylender, T. Gardener, now gardener can be a service also, but still, yeah, gardener is a service mostly, so S. No, not S, T. Potter, that's secondary, S. Beekeeping, P. Astronaut, T. Call center employees, T. Students in a school are often classified into primary, secondary, or junior and senior. What is the criterion that is used? Do you think it is a useful classification? Discuss. So students in a school are often divided or classified into primary and secondary, or junior and senior. The criterion that is used is the class of the particular student to classify them into primary or secondary. I don't think this is a useful calculation because classification, because I think that students must be classified into groups by their ability to study or think, okay, because mostly people lose their chances for any exams or something like that, mostly due to the fact that they might be junior and the exam needs seniors to write it. It is more preferable if classifications are done on the ability of a student rather than the age. Comparing the three sectors, I must say this, in 90% of this time the junior and senior system is working, but in 10% of times it just fails to do so by the reasons that I told you. So now let's continue comparing the three sectors. So the various production activities that the primary, secondary and tertiary sector produce is very large number of the various production activities in the primary, secondary and tertiary sector produce a very large number of goods and services. Also, the three sectors have a large number of people working in them to produce these goods and services. The next step, therefore, is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people work in each sector. In an economy, there could be one or more sectors which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, while other sectors are relatively small in size. Now, how do we count the various goods and services and know the total production in each sector? With so many thousands of goods and services produced, you might think it is an impossible task. Not only would the task be enormous, you might also wonder how we can add up cars and computers and nails and furniture. It wouldn't make sense. You are right in thinking so. Okay. So, very rare occasions in which the textbook is appreciating us. To get around this problem, economists suggest the values of goods and services should be used rather than adding up the actual numbers. So, for example, 10,000 kilograms of wheat is sold at 20 rupees per kg, then the value of wheat will be 2 lakh. Okay, the value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 15 per coconut would be 75,000. Similarly, the value of goods and services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. Remember, there is one precaution, okay, to take. Not every good or service that is produced and sold needs to be counted. It makes sense only to include the final goods and services. Take for instance a farmer who sells wheat to a flour mill for 20 rupees per kg. Okay, the mill grinds the wheat and sells the flour to a biscuit company for rupees 25 per kg. The biscuit company uses the flour and things such as sugar and oil to make 4 packets of biscuits. It sells biscuits in the market to the consumers for rupees 80, that is rupees 20 per packet. Biscuits are the final goods, that is the goods that reach the customers. So why are only the final goods and services counted? In contrast to the final goods, goods such as wheat and the wheat flour in this example are intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of final goods already includes the value of all the intermediate goods that are used in marketing the final good. Hence, the value of rupees 80 for the biscuit, final good, already includes the value of the flour, 25 rupees. Similarly, the value of all other intermediary goods would have been included. To count the value of the flour and wheat separately is therefore not correct, because then we would be counting the values of the same thing a number of times. First as wheat, then as flour, and then as biscuit. So the value of the final good and goods and services in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of the sector for that year. Okay, and the sum of the production of all these sectors is what we call as the gross domestic product, GDP, of a country. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. So this is a proper definition. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. Okay, GDP shows how big the economy is. In India, the mammoth task of measuring GDP is undertaken by a central government ministry. This ministry, with the help of various government departments of all Indian states and union territories, collect information relating to total volume of goods and services and their prices, and then estimates the GDP. Okay, and historical change in the sectors. Generally, it had been noted from the histories of many now developed countries that at initial stages of development, primary sector was the most important sector of economic activities. Okay, now as the methods of farming changed and agriculture sector began to prosper, it produced much more food than before. Many people could now take up other activities. There were increasing number of craftsperson and traders. Buying and selling activities increased many times. Besides, there were also transporters, administrators, army, etc. However, at this stage, most of the goods produced were natural products from the primary sector, and most people were also employed in this sector. Okay, over a long time, more than 100 years, and especially because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, factories came up and started expanding. Those people who had earlier worked on farms now began to work in factories in large numbers. They were forced to do so, as you read in history chapters. Okay, now people began to use many more goods that were produced in factories at cheap rates. Okay, secondary sector gradually became the most important in total production and employment. Hence, over time, a shift had taken place. This means that the importance of the sectors had changed. In the past 100 years, there has been a further shift from secondary to tertiary sector in developed countries. The service sector has become the most important in terms of total production. Most of the people are also employed in the service sector. This is the general pattern observed in developed countries. Very sad to inform you, this entire thing, the thing that we just read now, it's a 5-mark question. Big thing. But just understand that and you can go forward. What is the total production and employment in 3 sectors in India? Over the years, there has been changes similar to the pattern observed for the developed countries. We shall see the next section. Let's work these out. What does the history of developed countries indicate about the shift that has taken place between the sectors? So, as you can see, this is the entire paragraph that we just discussed above. Correct and arrange the important aspects for calculating GDP from this jumble. To count goods and services, we add the numbers that are produced. We count all those that are produced in the last 5 years. What? Since we shouldn't leave out anything, we add up all these goods and services. To count goods and services, we add the value of the goods and services produced. We count all those that were produced in the last 5 years. Okay, and we should only count the final product rather than all the products. Now you might be asking, why just count the entire products? Let's say that I produced 2 lakh worth of wheat, okay, and I brought 1 kilo, 20 rupees. Okay, so add 20 here. Along with that, I sold it to another guy, this entire 1 kilo, for 25 rupees. And that guy increased the price 30 rupees. And he again sold it for 35 rupees. Now GDP, it is regulated by 35 rupees. Okay, only 35 rupees will be counted. But in the case of the total, there will be 110 rupees. Ridiculously high. Check. Now let's say in another country, I sold for 20 rupees. And then after that, I sold for 25 rupees. This gives us 110 if we add the entire thing. And this gives us 45. So basically, what I sold in both countries is 1 kilogram of wheat. Okay, but here it amounted to 110 because of repeated addition of the cost that each seller charged his people. But here it's only 45 by adding all of them. Okay. Now also due to repeated selling and making of new products, rupees 35. Okay, rupees 35 will be the GDP. But here rupees 25 is the GDP. So let's say I have wheat here, I sold it to a wheat mill there, and this wheat mill, they sold it to a biscuit company, and this biscuit company sold it to another biscuit company, which adds a layer of chocolate chip. 35 rupees final product. Here I have wheat farm. I sold it to this mill, okay, so that they can produce it into flour. But guess what? It seems as though this country doesn't have any biscuit factories. So sad. So they had to stop at rupees 25. Primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors in India. Graph 1 shows the production of goods and services in the three sectors. This is shown for 2 years, 1973 to 74 and 2013 to 14. We have used this data for the 2 years. We have used this data for these 2 years because the data are comparable and authentic. You can see how the total production has grown over the 40 years. Okay, let's see this graph. It is rupees and crores, the GDP by primary, secondary and tertiary sector in India. If you see, from 1973 to 74, it was between 500,000 and 1 million crores. But from 2013 to 14, it's nearly 5,500,000 crores. So that is a lot of money. Yep. Answer the following questions by looking at the graph. Which sector was the largest producing sector in 1973 to 74? Primary. Which is the largest producing sector in 2013 to 14? Tertiary. What can you say? Can you say which sector has grown the most over the 40 years? The sector that has grown the most over the 40 years is the tertiary sector. What was the GDP of India in 2013 to 14? Somewhere between 5,500,000 crore and 6 million crores. Yep. What does the comparison between 1973 to 74 and 2013 to 14 show? What conclusions can we draw from this comparison? Let's find out. Rising importance of the tertiary sector in production. So over the 40 years between 1973 to 74 and 2013, while production in all three sectors has increased, it has increased the most in the tertiary sector. As a result, in the year 2013 to 14, the tertiary sector has emerged as the largest producing sector in India, replacing the primary sector. Okay, now why is the tertiary sector becoming so important in India? There could be several reasons. First, in any country, several services such as hospitals, educational institutions, posts and telegraph services, police stations, courts, villages, administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transport, banks, insurance companies, etc. are required. These can be considered basic services in in a developing country. The government has to take responsibility for the provisions of these services. Right. Second, the development of agriculture and industry leads to the development of services such as transport, trade, storage, and uh, the like, as we have already seen. Oh, okay, like the others that we have already seen. Greater the development of the primary and secondary sectors, more would be the demand for such services. Of course, that makes sense because when there is more agriculture and industries, then there would be need for more transport and other services. So, yeah, by the increase of the primary and secondary sectors, then obviously the tertiary would flourish. Third, as income levels rise, certain sections of people start demanding many more services like eating out, tourism, shopping, private hospitals, private schools, professional training, etc. You can see this change quite sharply in cities, especially in big cities. So here's a question that might come, 5 mark question. Oh no, there's more. Okay, so fourth, over the past decade or so, certain new services, such as those based on information and communication technology, has become more important and essential. The production of these services has been rising rapidly. In chapter 4, we shall see examples of these new services and the reasons for their expansion. Now, before continuing, let's recap everything. So, the first reason why the tertiary sector has got a major hike in development is because in a developing country there are many services such as telegraph services, educational institutions, hospitals, post, municipal corporations, defense, transport, bank, insurance companies, courts, etc. are considered basic services, and the government is responsible for making provisions for these services. The second, the increase in the growth of agriculture and industries leads to the development of the tertiary sector. As the income levels rise, many people will have demand for eating out, movies, private hospitals, shopping, etc. And this change can be mostly viewed in cities, and in that way also the tertiary sector is increasing. The next reason for the hike of the tertiary sector is due to the growth of the information technology sector. All right. Now, however, you must remember that not all of the service sector is growing equally well. Service sector in India employs many different kinds of people. At one end, there are a limited number of services that employ high skilled and educated workers. At the other end, there is a very large number of workers engaged in services such as small shopkeepers, repair persons, transport persons, etc. These people barely manage to earn a living, and yet they perform these services because no alternative opportunities for work are available to them. Hence, only a part of the sector is growing in importance. You shall read more about this in the next session. Alright. Where are most of the people employed? So, graph 2 represents the percentage share of three sectors in GDP. Now you can directly see the changing importance of the sectors over 40 years. Okay, so here's the graph. Now as you can see, the blue is primary, the red is secondary, and the green is tertiary. So the share in GDP, if you check, the primary sector and tertiary sector was the most. Okay, and nowadays only the tertiary sector, mostly the tertiary sector. The primary sector somehow manages to exist. The tertiary sector gives more to the GDP than any other sector. The secondary sector then was quite low, but now it's okay. The tertiary sector has reduced, as you can see. The primary sector has reduced, and the tertiary sector has got the most increase. Okay, that's a graph. A remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the three sectors in GDP, a similar shift has not taken place in the employment. Okay, in graph 3, employment. Graph 3 shows the share of employments in the three sectors in 1977 and 1978 and 2017 to 2018. The primary sector continues to be the largest employer even now. So, as you can see, the primary sector reduced from 71 to 44, and the secondary increased from 11 to 25, but the tertiary sector increased from 18 to 31. But if you still see, the primary sector happens to be the biggest employer. Okay, so important points. Now, why didn't a similar shift out of the primary sector happen in case of employment? This is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sector. Even though industrial output or the production of goods went up by more than 9 times during the period, employment in the industry went up around 3 times. The same applies to the tertiary sector as well. While production in the service sector rose by 14 times, employment in the service sector rose about 5 times. Okay, so this entire thing is about unemployment. Okay, we'll go there. As a result, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only about 1/6 of the GDP. In contrast to this, the secondary and tertiary sector produce the rest of the produce, whereas employ less, about half the people. Okay, does this mean that the workers in agriculture are not producing as much as they could? What it means is that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. Okay, so if you move a few people out, production will not be affected. In other words, people in agriculture sector are underemployed. Okay, so for instance, take the case of a small farmer Lakshmi owning about 2 hectares of unirrigated land dependent on only rain, okay, and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. Why? They have nowhere else to go for work. You will see that everyone is working, none remains idle, but in actual fact, their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment. When people are apparently working, but all of them are made to do less than their potential, this kind of underemployment is hidden, in contrast to some who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is also called disguised unemployment. Okay. Now, suppose the landlord Sukharam comes to hire 1 or 2 members of the family to work on his land. Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages. Since you do not need 5 people to look after that small plot, 2 people moving out does not affect production on their farm. In the above example, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earning of the family would increase, and they would also continue to produce as much as from their land. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if we remove a lot of people from agricultural sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agricultural production will not suffer. The incomes of the people who will take up the other work would increase the total family income. This underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sector in urban areas who search for daily employment. Okay, they are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons, and others doing odd jobs. Okay, many of them don't find work every day. Similarly, we see other people of the service sector on the street pushing a cart or selling something where they may have spent the whole day but earned very little. Okay, now they are doing this work because they do not have better opportunities than these. Now let's work this out. Complete the table using the graphs 2 and 3 and answer that follows. Ignore if data is not available for some years. Okay, we can do this easily. What are the changes that you observe in the primary sector over a span of 40 years? So, in the share of GDP and in the share of unemployment, it reduces. Okay, now choose the correct answer. Underemployment occurs when people are working less than what they are capable of doing. Compare and contrast the changes in India with the pattern that was observed for developed countries. Okay, what kind of changes between sectors were decided but did not happen in India? So, in developed countries, mostly the tertiary sector is flourishing than in India. That's the thing. Now, why should we be worried about underemployment? Underemployment reduces the GDP of our country. Okay, that's the thing. Now, how to create more employment? From the above discussion, we can see that there continues to be a considerable underemployment in agriculture. There are also people who are not employed at all. In what ways can one increase employment for people? Let us look at some of them. Take the case of Lakshmi with her 2 hectare plot of unirrigated land. The government can spend some money or banks can provide a loan to construct a well for her family to irrigate the land. Lakshmi will be then able to irrigate her land and take a second crop, wheat, during the Rabi season. Let us suppose that 1 hectare of wheat can provide employment to 2 people for 50 days, including sowing, watering, fertilizers, application, and harvesting. So, 2 more members of the family can be employed in her own field. Now, suppose a new dam is constructed and canals are dug to irrigate many such farms. This could lead to a lot of employment generation within the agricultural sector itself, reducing the problem of underemployment. Now, suppose Lakshmi and other farmers produce more than before. Okay, due to this, they would also need to sell something for this. Okay, they need to sell some of this so that they could get money. Okay, rather than just food. So, for this, they may be required to transport their products to a nearby town. If the government invests some money in transportation and storage of crops or makes better rural roads so that mini trucks reach everywhere, several farmers like Lakshmi, who now has access to water, can continue to grow and sell these crops. More GDP. Okay, now this activity can provide productive employment to not just farmers but also others such as services like transport or trade. Okay, now Lakshmi's need is not confined to water alone. To cultivate the land, she also needs seeds, fertilizers, agricultural equipments, pump sets to draw water. Being a poor farmer, she cannot afford all of these. Okay, so she will have to borrow money from moneylenders and pay high rates of interest. Okay, if local banks give her credit as a reasonable rate at a reasonable rate of interest, she will be able to buy all these uh, what and cultivate in her land. This means that along with water, we also need to provide cheap agricultural credit to the farmers of for farming to improve. Okay, we will look at some of these in the chapter 3, money and credit. Another way by which we can tackle this problem is to identify, promote, and locate industries and services in semi rural areas where a large number of people may be employed. So, for instance, suppose many farmers decided to grow arhar and chickpea, okay, that is the pulse crops. Setting up a dal mill to procure and process these and sell in the cities is one such example. Opening a cold storage could give an opportunity for farmers to store their products like potatoes and onions and sell them when the prices is good. Okay, so in villages near forest areas, we can start honey collection centers where farmers can come and sell wild honey. It is also possible to set up industries that process vegetables and agricultural produce like potato, sweet potato, rice, wheat, tomato, fruits, etc., which can be sold in outside markets. Okay, this will provide employment in industries located in semi rural areas and not necessarily in large urban areas. Now, what groups of people do you think are unemployed or underemployed in your area? Can you think of some measures that could be taken up for them? No, I don't really know. Okay. Now, do you know that in India, about 60% of the population belongs to the age groups of 5 to 29 years? Out of these, only 51% are attending educational institutions. Okay, and the rest are particularly those aged less than 18, may be at home, or many of them may be working as child laborers. If these children are to attend schools, we will require more buildings, more teachers, and other staff. A study conducted by the erstwhile Planning Commission, now known as Niti Aayog, estimates that nearly 20 lakh jobs can be created in the education sector alone. So, similarly, if we are to improve the health situation, we need many more doctors, nurses, health workers, etc., to work in rural areas. These are some ways by which jobs would be created, and we would also be able to address the important aspects of development that we talked about in chapter 1. Every state or region has potential for increasing the income and employment for people in that area. It could be tourism or a regional craft industry or new services like IT. Some of these would require proper planning and support from the government. For example, the same study by the Planning Commission says that if tourism as a sector is improved every year, we can give additional employment to more than 35 lakh people. So, as you can see, we plan a lot and we don't do things. I think that's called procrastination, I'm not sure. So, we plan a lot and does not do things, and that's bad. Okay, why am I saying this, right? We can have a lot of ideas, building solar panels in the deserts, maybe having vertical housing in even the rural areas, but those ideas are just never getting implemented. We must realize that some of the suggestions discussed above would take a long time to implement. Yes, for the short term, we need some quick measures. Recognizing this, the central government in India made a law implementing the right to work. I suggest that we cancel the system of reservations, give better education or build better schools in the tribal regions, giving better chance for the ST and SCs to study and become better in academics, and cancel the reservation system, because reservation system is, which I believe, is the thing that is holding back our country from better GDPs. Because if people who does not know how to work or does not have the knowledge on how to work gets a job rather than skilled people, okay, then that would not be effective. So recognizing this, the central government in India made a law implementing the right to work. Okay. So this is the short term goals, but the only issue is they say that the long term goals will take a lot of time to implement. They should start now. They can't just postpone it, can they? Now, about 625 districts in India, this right to work thing is implemented. Now, it is called the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in 2005. Okay, that is MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Now I tell you this, there is no other way but to memorize this. Okay. Now under MGNREGA, I'm closing my eyes and I'm trying to say this myself. MGNREGA, that stands for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Seems about fine. Now, all those who are able to and are in need of work in rural areas are guaranteed 100 days of employment in a year by the government. If the government fails in its duty to provide employment, it will give the unemployment allowances to the people. The type of work that would in future help to increase the production from land will be given preference under the act. So yeah, so let's work these out. What do you think? Why do you think MGNREGA is referred to as the right to work? Because they are giving work to the people who are in need of and who are capable of doing work. Okay, for 100 days. Okay, so that is the right to work. Now imagine that you are a village head. In that capacity, suggest some activities that you think should be taken up under this act that would also increase the income of people. Discuss. This is a create level question. That's a very good question actually. So let's try to answer that. So if we are a village head, okay, and we suggest some activities, okay, that I need to suggest some activities that I think should be taken up under this act that would increase the income of the people. One thing, maybe make the small farmers or the sons of small farmers or landless laborers work, okay, in big uncultivated plots of lands, or maybe there are uncultivated plots of lands that are scattered around. So in my locality also, I'll give you an example. If this is my house, there are two houses other than mine, and then we got a main road right here, okay, and then there is another road here that is not bigger than the main road, but I accidentally did that. No, actually the image representation is wrong. This is my house, this is the house next to mine, and here is one more house. This one is a little back. Now here we have a little bridge like thing that connects us across the stream that runs in front of our house, and there's this big plot of land uncultivated. There's tree here, okay, that's the only cultivation there. Now this is connected to the road that leads us here, and there's a canal over there through which water comes, of course. And there's another road that also is on the other side, and it leads to this road that connects mine to two cities. Okay, let's call it SR and KA. So basically, this big plot is uncultivated, so we could cultivate in those types of areas. One thing. The next thing, if you go through here and then go ahead, then there's also a piece of land that is not cultivated right here. Cultivate there. Okay, so this is just some examples in my locality. Okay, and maybe you might be saying, but this is not public land, people might be owning it. Fine, ask the people to let the people work there so that they get a share and the farmers get a share, increasing the GDP, all the while both people get the profits. That's just one example. Now, how would income and employment increase if farmers were provided with irrigation and marketing facilities? Very good question. So, if a farmer is given the irrigation facility and the marketing facility, basically what he could do is, in his big plot, he could cultivate many crops and things like that. Okay, due to the irrigation facilities. Okay, one thing. And the next thing, if he has so much produce and he's not going to sell them, then that's a loss. So give him some marketing facilities to sell this produce to a market somewhere around there. This is more of a house than a market, but believe it's a market, and he could sell this thing to the market. Okay, so basically that could help in increasing the GDP, but you might be asking, how would that help with income and employment? We have an example here. So Lakshmi has 2 hectares of land, which is a terribly huge land for just one woman with no irrigation facilities. So she has this big plot of land and no water. Give her water, give her marketing technology or marketing facilities, and she'll be rich. She'll be rich. And if she is rich, she's gonna hire some people. Of course, more than 3 people. And she's gonna give them money, and she's gonna say, okay, go help me in my farm. Why? Because she could not manage the entire 2 hectares on herself, obviously. So these 3 people come and help her in the field. And guess what? The profits rose up. And then, since there is irrigation, she can make other kind of crops. Okay, so in the she cultivates paddy. For what? Because the rain is in the monsoon and paddy is cultivated during monsoon. She makes wheat, okay, in the rabi season. Okay, she makes zayed crops like watermelons or things like that during the summer season. Or she might also cultivate some leguminous plants so that her field is given some more nutrients. Okay, she might do any of these. Okay, that's it basically. Got it? In what ways can employment be increased in urban areas? Create more jobs. There are like a lot of new fields where jobs could come up. Why do you think AI exists? Okay, maybe it can take away a lot of jobs. Singing, dancing, arts, anything like that, it's gone. But new jobs are created. Give proper education, give proper training in AI, new jobs will be created, more employment in the urban areas. Okay? Division of sectors as organized and unorganized. So, this sectors being organized as sectors being divided as organized and unorganized is pretty simple to understand. So this is Kanta and she's looking pretty sad. Kanta works in an office. Okay, she attends her office from 9:30 to 5:30. Gets a salary regularly at the end of every month. In addition to the salary, she also gets provided fund as per rules laid down by the government. She also gets medical and other allowances. Kanta does not go to the office on Sundays. This is a paid holiday. When she joined work, she was given an appointment letter stating all the terms and conditions for work. And still she said, Kamal. Kamal is Kanta's neighbor. He is a daily wage laborer in a nearby grocery shop. He goes to the shop at 7:30 in the morning and works till 8 pm in the evening. He gets no other allowances apart from his wages. He is not paid for the days he doesn't work. And he has therefore no leave or paid holidays. Nor was he given any formal letter stating that he has been employed in the shop. He can be asked to leave anytime by his employer. So you see the differences of the work done by two neighbors right here. One hard worked and actually studied and is in an office. Another played around and he is in a grocery shop. So, to all those out there who's watching this and call people who study nerds or making fun of them, don't do that. You know what I am about to say. Now, do you see the differences in the conditions of work between Kanta and Kamal? I hope you do. I hope you do. Now, Kanta works in an organized sector. I don't think this is to be marked. Organized sector covers those enterprises or places of work where the terms of employment are regular and therefore people are assured work. They are registered by the government and have to follow its rules and regulations, which are given in various laws such as the Factories Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment Guarantee Act, Shops and Establishment Acts, etc. Many acts. Nothing real. So it is called organized because it has some formal processes and procedures. Okay. So some of these people may not be employed by anyone but may work on their own, but they too have to register themselves with the government and follow the rules and regulations. Okay. Now, workers in the organized sector enjoy security of employment. Okay, so they are expected to work only a fixed number of hours. If they work more, they have to be paid overtime by their employer. Okay, they also get several other benefits from the employer. What are these benefits? They get paid leaves, payment during holidays, okay, provident fund, gratuity, pension and whatever. They are supposed to get medical benefits under the laws. Okay, and under the laws the factory managers has to ensure facilities like drinking water and a safe working environment. When they retire, they also get pensions as well. Sick leaves, pensions and what-not. The organized sector is somewhere working actually feels good. There we go. In contrast, Kamal works in the unorganized sector. The unorganized sector is characterized by small and scattered units which are largely outside the control of the government. Okay, there are rules and regulations, but these are not followed, obviously. So, jobs here are low paid and often not regular. Okay, There is no provision for overtime, paid leave, holidays, leave due to sickness, etc. So basically, if you are in such unorganized work sector, it is best if you don't do overtime. Employment is not secure. Actually, you know what? Do the overtime, because your employer might say, nah, you're not doing overtime, and might fire you because employment is not secure. People can be asked to leave without any reason. Okay, when there is less work, such as during some seasons, some people may be asked to leave. Okay, a lot also depends on the whims of the employer. So if the employer thinks that you're a bad guy without any particular reason, he might say get out. This sector includes a large number of people who are employed on their own, doing small jobs such as selling on streets or doing repair works. Self employed. Similarly, farmers work on their own and hire laborers as and when they require. Okay, now look at the following examples which are organized sector. So, for organized, I will say O, and for unorganized, I will say U. O, head load work carrier bringing cement on his back in a market. U, farmer irrigating her field. O, because it's her field. Wait, we can't say that. U, a doctor in a hospital treating a patient. O, a daily wage laborer uh, working under a contractor. That's a U. Next, a factory worker going to work in a big factory. If it is a big factory and it's reputable, then obviously it has to be organized. A handloom weaver working in her house. Unorganized. Talk to some people who has a regular job in the organized sector and another who works in an unorganized sector. Compare and contrast their working conditions in all aspects. Now the thing is, I don't have anyone who's around my locality working under the unorganized sector, unless I go and step out a bit to the main road that I talked about before. So I could do that, and mostly the points that we are going to have to say is the ones that are given above, so don't actually go and bother. But again, good question, and I must say this has a very great chance to come in the board exams. Must say. Now, how would you distinguish between an organized and unorganized sector? Okay, explain in your own words. Again, the same answer to the ones here. Now, this one is better if you write it in tables, and this one is fine if you don't. Now, the table below show the estimated number of people in India in the organized and unorganized sectors. So, read the table carefully, fill in the missing data, and answer the questions that follows. So, in the primary sector, that is the organized, there is 1 million people and 0 in the unorganized. Okay, and the total is 232 million people. What the hell? So am I supposed to like, oh yeah, I must fill in the data, right? So this must be 231. Okay, 231. And the total here, I must add all these, which I am very lazy to do. Is there any other options? No, okay, fine. 3 here, 9 and 3. 393, I suppose. Now my calculation might be wrong. Now in the total section, there is like 5. What? 7 and 4. 475. Think. Check my calculations. I'm not sure. So what you can do to find the percentage is find the total 475. So 82 divided by 475 multiplied by 100 is this. And this is 393 divided by 475 multiplied by 100. So, what is the percentage of people in the unorganized sector in agriculture and why? In agriculture, okay. So, that you can find out by what I said. Now, do you agree that agriculture is an unorganized sector activity? Why? Most of the people are working under the unorganized sector in agriculture, primary sector, okay. Now, if we look at the country as a whole, we find that dash percentage of the workers in India are in the unorganized sector. We can find that. Organized sector employment is available to only dash sector of the workers in India. Find that. Okay, so basically, we continue. How to protect workers in unorganized sector? Two more pages, let's go. So the organized sector offers jobs that are the most sought after, okay, but the employment opportunities in the organized sector have been expanding very slowly. Okay, it is also common to find many organized sector enterprises in the unorganized sector. They adopt such strategies to evade taxes and refuse to follow laws that protect the laborers. As a result, a large number of workers are forced to enter the unorganized sector jobs, which pay a very low salary. They are often exploited and not paid a fair wage. Their earnings are low and not regular. These jobs are not secure and have no other benefits. This entire paragraph is quite important. So, yeah, so I might be painting a bit. There we go. Question: why is many organized sector enterprises in the unorganized sector evade taxes? Simple. Now, since 1990s, it is also common to see a large number of workers losing their job in the organized sector. These workers are forced to take up jobs in the unorganized sector with low earnings. Hence, besides the need for more work, there is also a need for protection and support of the workers in the unorganized sector. So, wait. Who are these vulnerable people who need protection? In the rural areas, the unorganized sector mostly comprises of the landless laborers, okay, landless agricultural laborers, small and marginal farmers, sharecroppers, and artisans such as weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters, goldsmiths, etc. So nearly 80% of the rural households in India are small and marginal farmer category. These farmers need to be supported through adequate facility for timely deliveries of seed, agricultural inputs, credit, storage facilities, and marketing outlets. In the urban areas, the unorganized sector comprises mainly of workers in small scale industry, casual workers in construction, trade and transport, etc., and those who work as street vendors. So, 5%. Uh, there we go. So, and those who work as street vendors, heavy load workers, garment makers, rag pickers, etc. Small scale industries also needs government's support for procuring raw materials and marketing of output. Okay, so small scale industries also need government support for procuring raw material, marketing and marketing output. The casual workers in both the rural and urban areas need to be protected. We also find that majority of workers from the scheduled castes, tribes and backward communities find themselves in unorganized sector. Besides getting the irregular and low paying work, these workers also face social discrimination. Protection and support to the unorganized sector workers is thus necessary for both economic and social development. So, when factories close down, many once regular workers are found selling goods or pushing a cart or doing some or other odd jobs. These are some of the situations. It's a pretty bad situation. Support must be given. If so, then people might not be kicked out of their jobs and things like that. With many activities taking place around us, one need to use the process of classification to think in a useful manner. The criterion for classification could be depending on what we desire to find out. The process of classification help us to analyze the situation. In dividing the economic activities into three sectors, primary, secondary, and tertiary, the criterion used was the nature of activity. On the basis of this classification, we were able to analyze the pattern of total production and employment in India. Similarly, we divided the economic activities into organized and unorganized and used a classification to look at the employment in the two sectors. So, what was the most important conclusion that was derived from the classification exercises? What were the problems and solutions that were indicated? Can you summarize the information in the following tables? So, yeah, if you can do that. So, sectors in the terms of ownership, public and private sectors. There's also the joint sector, as I remember it. But anyway, another way of classifying economic activities into sectors could be on the basis of who owns assets and who's responsible for the delivery of services. So, the public sector, the government, in the public sector, the government owns most of the assets and provides all services. In the private sector, ownership of assets and the delivery of services is in the hands of the private individuals or companies. Okay? So, railways or post offices is examples of the public sector, whereas companies like Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited, TISCO, or Reliance Industries Limited are privately owned. So, activities in the private sector are guided by the motive to earn profits. To get such services, we have to pay money to these individuals and companies. The purpose of the public sector is not just to earn profits. Okay, so governments raise money through taxes and other ways to meet expenses on the services rendered by it. Modern day governments spend on a whole range of activities. What are these activities? Why do governments spend on such activities? Let us find out. So, what are these activities and why do governments spend on such activities? Let's find out. There are several things needed by the society as a whole, but which the private sector will not provide at a reasonable cost. Why? They need profits. Okay, they need profits. Some of these need spending large sums of money, which is beyond the capacity of the private sector. Also, collecting money from thousands of people who use these facilities is not easy. So, even if they do provide these things, they would charge a high rate for their use. So, examples are construction of roads, bridges, railways, harbors, generating electricity, providing irrigation through dams, etc. Thus, governments have to undertake such heavy spending and ensure that these facilities are available for everyone. Not only bridges, what about this water pumps, public water pumps? What if the private is giving this water pumps? It will be a very bad situation for the ones who are using it, obviously, because they will increase the price so much. Now, there are some activities which the government has to support. And what are these? The private sector may not continue their production or business unless the government encourages it. For example, selling electricity at the cost of generation may push up the cost of production of goods in many industries. So, many units, especially small scale units, might have to shut down. The government here steps in by producing and supplying electricity at rates which these industries can afford. Government has to bear part of the cost, which it is collecting from an endless cycle of taxes. Now, similarly, the government in India buys wheat and rice from farmers at a fair price, then it stores in the godowns and sells at a lower price to consumers through ration shops. You have read about this in the chapter Food Security in class 9th, which I do not remember. Okay, the government has to bear some of the costs. In this way, the government supports both farmers and consumers. So, there are a large number of activities which are the primary responsibility of the government. The government must spend on these. So, providing healthcare and education facilities for all is an example. We have discussed some of these issues in the first chapter. Running proper schools and providing quality education, particularly elementary education, is the duty of the government. India's size of illiterate population is one of the largest in the world. I must say, from the things that I have learned in history last year and this year, for most of the things that we are going through and we are lacking in, such as the high population of illiterate people, that is very bad, we tend to blame it on the British colonialism, which is getting quite old. Okay, it has been what, 75 years something. After that, it's nearing 100 years, but we are still blaming things on that, according to what I see. I did ask this question in class and everything. Now, similarly, we know that nearly half of India's children are malnutritioned and a quarter of them are critically ill. We have read about infant mortality rates. Okay, the infant mortality rates of Odisha is 40, or Madhya Pradesh it's 48 percentages. Okay, is higher than some of the poorest regions of the world. So that is a very bad situation, okay, that our people are going through. Around 50% of the children who are born dies within 1 year. That's just a that's just a very bad situation. The government also needs to pay attention to aspects of human development such as the availability of safe drinking water, housing facilities for the poor, and food and nutrition. I have this idea. Why don't we build a large community thing where all the beggars and people who are on the roads or on the streets who are genuinely homeless and not just drug addicts or alcoholics, they be allowed into this special uh, camps or something like that, where there are bunk beds and these people can put their belongings in a special storage house that is next to it, in special organized places like banks, and then these people could live in there, and the government could ensure that these idiots don't misuse these things. Okay, I call idiots of those who misuse these things. If they're genuinely homeless, then that's a very bad situation. And probably we could do that and then help the homeless population. Maybe that's just an idea, obviously. So housing facilities for the poor, they might also be asked to do some particular work, okay, uh, under the obviously the MGNREGA thing that we learned before, okay. So I think it could be a great idea, and food and nutrition should be provided, okay, by the government, not to them, to everyone who is poor, obviously. It is also the duty of the government to take care of the poorest and the most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas. Now, even though this is a good idea, there is a side effect that comes with it called the system of reservations, which reserves some percentage of seats for some particular type of people. Those systems were great in the olden days, but then I just think that it's getting very reluctant, no, the word is not reluctant, it's just getting too old. Now people are almost equal, but still this situation is going on. If we were to provide good quality education to the people who we give reservations to, then the system of reservations could be taken away, okay, and then it could be purely on the basis of merit rather than their background. Now, this is over. Now we are going to read the summary. In this chapter, we have looked at ways of classifying economic activities into some meaningful groups. One way of doing this is to examine whether the activity relates to the primary, secondary, or tertiary sectors. The data for India for the last 30 years shows that while the goods and services produced in the tertiary sector contributes the most to the GDP, the employment remains in the primary sector, most employment. We have also seen what all can be done for increasing employment opportunities in the country. Another classification is to consider whether people are working in organized or unorganized sectors. Most people are working in the unorganized sector and protection is necessary for them. We also looked at difference between the private and public activities and why it is important for public activities to focus on certain areas. And now we just have the exercises left. So that's it for this chapter. This was pretty long. I think it's the longest video that we have recorded till now. And you know why I say that this is pretty long? This took 3 days. Check this part in the last videos, top left. All those will be different days. This is a pretty long chapter and you need to break it down if you are studying this. Just a suggestion.